First item on our agenda of the Board of Selectmen agenda is tax refunds. And you have in your packet a memo from Pat Crisco, our tax collector, dated January 2013, showing real estate refunds totaling $8,571.71 and motor vehicle refunds totaling $2,207.98 for total refunds for January of $10,799.69. So I would entertain a motion to approve those refunds.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. So that brings us now to our joint meeting, and just by way of background, back in November of 2011, the Board of Selectmen appointed a building committee for the phasing of the Beecher infrastructure upgrade. And members of that committee, I think 4 of the 5 members are here tonight, are Jeff Kaufman, who's the chair, Andy Esposito from the Board of Finance, Greg Coyne from the Board of Selectmen, and Sheila McCrevin from the Board of Education. Jason Fannenbecker has served on the committee as a representative of the Beecher PTO. And they've been meeting diligently for the past year and are going to be presenting tonight the plan that they have submitted to the Board of Education, which approved the plan, and that they will now submit that to us. And so, Sheila, would you like to introduce the people who will be presenting the plan tonight?
Okay, I actually, I'm on the agenda because at the time we didn't think that our chairman, Jeff Hawkins, was going to be able to make it to the meeting, but he is here, so I'm going to toss it over to him.
Okay.
I just want to thank the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance for their creating the committee back in November of 2011. We've done it 23 times. There was a period of time that we met weekly, and we've gone through this project from stem to stern. And we did have the project scope expanded once to include the pool, and we understand, obviously, in light of the Newtown events, that we're going to have a little bit more expansion going on here. But our aim is to get everything that is necessary at Beecher Road School addressed. So with that, I'm going to give it to Jeff Coffin, who's going to introduce the rest of the team.
Yeah, because I wouldn't be able to do this until my wife got here, so. Not late or anything. So this is great, actually. We've to be at the point where we're actually presenting something to all of you, and we're actually pretty excited about it. It's been a pretty hectic year, as we're on a number of meetings, number of consultants. I've been working with John from AKF, who you've all met because you funded him, and Doug from ESG, who is going to be doing the presentation with John. So I have my teleprompter here, so you have to forgive me. After several years of work, the previous building committee had recommended a project that was almost $20 million. As a response, the town, knowing that there were needs at the school, but $20 million would be difficult to get approved, set up a building committee, our building committee, to look at a recommendation to determine if A, the project could be pared down, or possibly built in phases over a 2 to 3 year time period. That was part of the original thing. I can read the charge, but I'm going to let Ed do that. So anyway, thank you. Thank you. The new building committee decided to prioritize and focus on the priorities of the town, the school and the town. The idea was creating a tight, energy efficient envelope to work as a base for additional phases. Becoming a more efficient facilities would replace the old systems, which haven't been updated in decades. As the analysis continued and the actual cost numbers were coming in, it was determined that possibly the project could be done in a one-shot deal and not phased. Basically, the numbers were coming in about half of what the original project was putting. We did actually pull a few items out of there, cosmetic things like casework, millwork, that kind of things, painting in different areas, but for the most, 90% of the project was in there. Then part of our charge was to add the pool in, so we've gotten this project to just over half, and we've included doing the pool. We engaged the services of John Rice from AKF to evaluate the mechanicals and the envelope with the approval of both of your committees and with his guidance. We then went out to 4 firms to evaluate our project and submit proposals. The 2 top choices were Honeywell and ESG. Eventually, the committee went with ESG, who will be explaining most of the recommended proposal this evening. We have kept you up to date pretty much on reports from your Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance meetings. I know Greg's been in our meetings, so I know he's been giving us good, solid reports, as has Andy. It doesn't get any better. We've also had the input of Dr. Stella, Al Pulo, Margaret Hamilton, who's the board chair, who attends our meetings. Making the committee, although it's a committee of 5 voting members, we actually have 8 people, including those 3 people. So basically half the committee was Board of Ed member representation. The committees met diligently for almost weekly and did a job that would not have been possible without the cooperation from everyone. At the presentation of the Board of Ed, they voted in approval of the project that is being proposed by the building committee by a vote of 8-1 in favor. Since that all happened, there's been discussions, and I've met with a number of people have met with Matt and Ed and Tony, and there was concern about even the size of what our project was. So I did go back and talk to Doug and ESG, and so they have already gone back and started working on the idea of phasing the project over a 2 to 3 year period. So although most of the presentation is going to be about what the project includes, I did ask Doug to include what would happen if we actually broke the project down into 2 to 3 phases. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to John Rice.
Good evening, everyone.
Let me get that for you, John.
Okay. I guess we can go this way. Just a couple of slides on who our firm is. I know I've presented to you before, but we're a consulting engineering firm, and we do comprehensive services, mechanical, electrical, fire protection, information technology, line design, commissioning. We like to say that we offer services for the lifetime of the building. We do the design, and we come back in, we can commission systems, and so that's who we are. Our core values are internal client, empowerment, and integrity. We were the engineers of record for the Fairfield schools when they expanded their district, a brand new middle school, and major renovations to 2 of the high schools. And we did the Stanford High School 9th grade addition. We're also engineer of records for on-call services for various school districts, including Greenwich and Danbury school districts. And just very briefly, this is one of our marquee projects that is in construction right now. This is in New York City. It's going to be the city's and even the region's first net zero energy school building. So this building is going to get all its energy from on-site renewable energy. So that's PV panels that are across the entire roof of the building, and all the systems in this brand new building are highly energy efficient. Just wanted to give you, and the way it was accomplished, 1,000 kW solar panel array, geothermal heat pump system for heating and cooling. We did extensive daylighting using natural light in most of the spaces. A lot of focus on loads that were in the building. How did the kitchen use energy? How did copiers and did we engage the students and the teachers in understanding energy use in the building, and they'll carry it forward. So for your project, these were the services that we were commissioned to do, and this is what we carried out. We started out with the review of all the existing reports that were done on Beecher Road School. There were 4 reports that were done over the years. We didn't want to duplicate any of that effort, so we did a thorough review of those reports. We determined the existing energy consumption of the building. We retained an outside firm that did an infrared scan of the facade of the building. I'm going to show you those results. We identified energy conservation measures, we evaluated renewable energy options, we explored alternate financing options. Then we came up with a phased capital plan of measures that you could take to improve this building. So then we developed a scope of work for the renovation project. And this is when we started working with ESG, the energy performance contractor, developing a design for the mechanical systems upgrade. And then we provided consultation services when the energy service contractor, the RFQ, when we put RFQs out and RFPs. We'll go through each of these. The first thing we did was evaluated the existing loads of the Beecher Road School, and this is how it came out. This says 36% of the building energy loads is to the heating system, 24% to fans, 22% to lighting, and whatever that says, 9% pump energy. Cooling is very little. There's very little air conditioning in most of the building. This was important just so we could understand where was the energy being used currently in the building. We said that right now the building didn't have air conditioning. If we looked at that previous slide, right now your energy cost is about $450,000 a year. If the entire building was air conditioned, if it was air conditioned with similar old technologies that you have right now, your energy cost would have been about $600,000. If it was air conditioned with a high efficiency chilled water system and high efficiency boilers, your total cost of energy for the building would be $500,000. This is what we're projecting to be the new base load, the new baseline energy consumption a year for the building with full air conditioning. If anyone has questions, just please stop me and I'll go over it. I mentioned that we retained a firm that did infrared scans of the building. And an infrared scan is a technique that they use to evaluate where heat is being lost. This is the cover of their report. You had these two students that were there. They kind of did an infrared scan of them and kind of showed how heat shows up using infrared scan technology. They use that technology on the facade of your building. This is the original A, B, and C wings, and it just shows where most of the heat loss was escaping in the building. There were single pane windows with metal frames, so on a day like this they get very cold and the heat just leaves the building, and then there's a lot of failed caulking all around the windows. So this is an area that we wanted to address as part of the project. And even in the newest part of the building, this is the S wing, and it's hard to see here, but there's these soffit vents, these little holes that vent the soffits of the building. But when you look at it, it was a major source of where heat is being lost. So the project will also include sealing those up. We came up with a list of energy improvement measures, and this is what we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to improve the building envelope. We wanted to replace the inefficient oil-fired boilers with high-efficiency natural gas boilers. We wanted to put BMS controls, an automatic control system that turns those fans off. When I started at the beginning, you saw fan energy was a major source of energy. That's because the systems run all day long, even when some of the spaces aren't being occupied. So controls would turn systems off when they're not needed. Same thing with lighting. Right now the lights stay on from about 7 in the morning till 10 in the evening. We have a measure, lighting controls, that if people leave a classroom, lights would go off. So a full lighting control system. We have a microturbine option, and I'll let Doug speak about that a little bit more. We evaluated renewable energy, PV panels to generate energy on site, and also wind turbine. And we felt these would be good teaching tools for the students in the school. So we retained a cost consultant who put cost to each of these measures, and we broke the project down into 4 phases. That's what we were asked to do. Each one of the phases approximately $4 million. So this first phase had some curtain wall replacement, some roofing, mechanical upgrades, the BMS controls, lighting controls. So and this final phase was most of the renewable energy in that final phase. So we came up with a project that was about $11.7 million, broken down into 4 phases. At this point, we stopped And we started feeling that there would be some benefit to going to an energy performance contractor. An energy performance contractor could realize federal tax incentives that you as a nonprofit organization wouldn't be able to realize. So we stopped and we said the benefits of going to an energy performance contractor was to realize the tax incentives. They give guaranteed energy savings, they give guaranteed maintenance savings. So at this point in the project, we decided to, with the building committee's recommendations, to issue an RFQ to energy service companies. And we got responses from 4 of them: CCM Energy, Energy Services Group, ESG, Honeywell, and Source One. From those 4, we shortlisted down to just 2 of them, ESG and Honeywell, and we got 2 competitive bids, investment grade audits from those 2 companies. We prepared these full evaluation sheets comparing those investment grade audits, but this is the upshot of all those bids that we got. ESG came up with a project with a, did I flip these? Oops. Just flip these words here. This is Honeywell's column. This is ESG's column. Sorry about that. Honeywell came up with a project that was $8.9 million. At the time, they didn't include replacement of all the mechanical equipment. ESG's project size was $12.4 million. The guaranteed energy savings that they are guaranteeing is over $250,000 a year. Honeywell was at this point $138,000. On top of that, there were guaranteed maintenance savings. You're paying about $10,000 a year in maintenance costs on the boilers. There's a lot of maintenance costs that are going into maintaining old equipment. So they're guaranteeing another $30,000 in energy and maintenance savings. Honeywell was $23,000. So the guaranteed savings, ESG was $283,000, almost $284,000. Honeywell was $162,000. So we made the recommendation to begin negotiating with ESG to come up with a plan to do this renovation project. So finally, with the building committee, we've talked about many things over the course of the last year and a half, but the main thing that we wanted to focus on was that whereas you have a building where there's a lot of failing systems, it presents a great opportunity. And the great opportunity is that you have to replace these systems anyway, that you can really come out of this with a high-performance building. Using an energy performance contractor, you could also qualify for a federal tax incentive that's on the table. But bottom line, that there's a real big opportunity here to leave a legacy for the community, to leave a really great facility for the community. So with that, I want to just turn it over to Doug, and Doug, if you could. Questions?
Any questions?
I'll get even with you later about this. Well, the good thing, the unfortunate thing about my presentation is when I'm done, it's going to be 5 degrees colder outside. So I'll try to go fairly quickly. And the other thing I need to apologize for is Tony advised me that I should do the same presentation I did for Board of Ed, so it's pretty technical. Okay, so there's about 20 slides in there about boilers and chillers and BMS systems and all those things you probably don't know about but want to know about. So it's going to be a crash course in building asset improvements. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Again, Energy Systems Group has been working with the community at Beecher Road and all the committees for approximately a year, working with AKF to develop the solutions. We're going to talk to you today for energy conservation. I have one of my associates with me today, Dan Koo, who's in the audience. Dan is our lead engineer on the project. He's been supported by 3 or 4 others that unfortunately couldn't make it here this evening. The project, we're going to talk about the utility baseline and just build a little bit about what John's talked about. I'll get into the scope, and then we're going to talk about some of the financial details. Jeff talked about the phasing program that we've put together and been asked to provide. I don't have it in the presentation, but I do have it in handouts, both in a 2 and a 3 year plan. So when we get to that point, I'll be happy to just kind of take you through it. A little bit about us. I know we submitted a fairly large book of qualifications back in the early RFQ process. We're an Indiana-based company, founded in 1994. We're roughly doing about 180 to 200 million dollars a year. We're owned by an Indiana utility, as I mentioned, called Beecher. They're traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Assets somewhere around 2.3 to $3 billion. So we have some very good substantial backing. We've got about 250 employees. I was number 11, so I've seen a lot of good, successful growth. That's a byproduct of our commitments to our clients. I think, as most everybody in this room knows, this will be our first project in the state of Connecticut. And so we have to do it right, because failure is not an option, because this is a significant growth market for us. We've won a number of awards. We think the outcome of this project has the magnitude, and you'll see here in a slide, to take you from where you're currently ranked within your peer group of schools within your region to a level that's going to be very notable. And we think there's some very good marketing assets that we can provide as a company to help you get some national awards and recognition. Energy Systems Group, I'm skipping through some of these, we're a product neutral, solutions neutral company. So we don't make anything. I don't make temperature controls. I don't make boilers. I don't make chillers. Our parent company has chartered us to just be a solutions provider. So what we focus on is understanding what our current clients have within their assets, and if there's a migration path that we can continue on those assets to get to a point of better technology today. It's our opinion that that's a lower cost avenue. And so we've just chosen not to make anything, because our clients typically already have assets that can be built upon, which is kind of what Beecher is about. The state of Connecticut did put out a pre-qualification for energy services companies, and we are on the state list, approved list for ESCOs. This is our footprint. A year and a half ago, we entered into the U.S. Virgin Islands. And since that time, we're also in Puerto Rico. Performance contracting, been talked about a lot in the community here over the last year and a half, 2 years. This is as simple as it really becomes. And I think if you look over here before the improvements, John talked about energy and maintenance expenditures. Currently, you're spending a lot of money in energy. You're spending some money in maintenance costs. Performance contracting is an opportunity to reduce the energy costs, reduce the maintenance costs, use the savings from both expenditure categories to pay for the improvements that the energy services company ESG is going to install within the facility. So it's a guaranteed savings approach, as John mentioned. I'll get into that a little bit more, but it really is the opportunity to install better technology than what you currently have today. Everybody knows the assets over there are about 40 to 50 years old in some areas of the school, and they're just a little bit tired. Some other benefits about performance contracting, unlike the traditional, is it is a design, build, construction process where you're hiring Energy Systems Group as the prime contractor to provide these improvements we're going to talk about tonight. Our contracting process includes a no change order contract. So if I get into the school and I start going through the corridors with duct work, and maybe I have to penetrate a firewall that didn't show up on a building walkthrough or investment grade audit or on a drawing, I actually absorb those costs to get through and reseal that firewall. No matter how many times I may find one, it's not a change order that I could send back to the owner. The only time there's a change order, there's really two times. One of them is if the scope of work changes during construction, and number two, if I'm asked to expedite my schedule because of a special event and I need to bring in after-hours crews. Guaranteed reduction in energy expenses, I talk about that a little bit. Right now, our guarantee is around $250,000 a year. If I don't make that number on an annual basis, I reconcile those accounts for the term of the agreement, which right now is proposed as 15 years. So if I only save you $100,000, I write a check for $150,000. If I save you $300,000, I do not share in those savings. Those savings go back to the owner to retain, to use for other investments or other budget relief. And then guaranteed system performance. The systems that we're installing have to comply with certain standards, codes, requirements, and if it doesn't, then it's our responsibility to come back and make those improvements without additional charges to our clients. So as you can see from a contracting process, it's a lot different than traditional. It's a risk mitigation opportunity, I think, to the town and the committees and the community that's involved with the school. And I think when we're done with the process, you'll probably say it's the best contracting procedure that you probably entered into. Just a couple of our buildings that we've completed work at: Baltimore Public Schools, about $23 million, 3 million square feet. This is just kind of a total of some of the savings that we've completed. They financed with tax-exempt bonds and state capital dollars through Energy Systems Group. Very good client, available for a reference call if anybody would want to. And then Vigo County School is a customer of mine in Indiana. We've actually completed 7 phases of work worth about $35 million. This is a lease purchase customer, so they have us provide the financing for the term of the improvements, either 10 or 15 years. And you can see our savings have been somewhere around the $8.5 million over the 7 projects. Again, another customer available for reference. John's talked about this a little bit already, and this is the energy use index, and it really just comes down to this graph, which shows the energy use index is a sampling of schools within your region from an energy utilization perspective, and how do you rank in comparison to them. And so all of these are the schools that are in this sampling. When you look at the numbers provided by Beecher Road, the school is now in about the 23 percentile. So it is our goal, because you're in the red, is to get you into the green, up into at least the 80 or higher after the improvements are completed. So the benefit that we have on this project is that the renewable energy opportunities really start kicking in to help reduce these costs. And I think you'll find when we're done, you'll have an Energy Star rated facility, and you'll get some national recognitions because of the improvements you've made over this period of time. Any questions on my company or what we've talked about so far? Then the base project kind of breaks down into a number of different categories: mechanical, building management systems, roofing, windows systems and building envelope, lighting and sensors, water conservation, and then miscellaneous improvements to include the swimming pool, transformers, and the walk-in freezer in the kitchen. John's already talked about a lot of this, but I won't get into the level of details, but I think everybody's aware that there's a new boiler plant that's going into the school. There's been some conversions already done to the existing boilers. You can see the physical size of those as compared to the new ones that fit through a doorway. The plant's going to have 3 boilers, so we've got 2 primary and a backup. They're very efficient. They're about 94% efficient. These new ones, you're probably lucky if you're in the 80s on what you're currently running. As John indicated, we're going to air condition the whole facility. And as you walk through the school, it's interesting to see all these little window units that are in all these classrooms. And they're all cranked down to about 60 degrees, and they never turn off. And every time I walk in and actually interview a teacher, they can't believe that there's even discussions about air conditioning the school, number one. But number 2, they say, I can't believe I'm not going to be looking at children with red faces. And it's not because they're working so hard for their academics, it's because it's a little bit warm inside of some of these classrooms. So the whole facility, when we're done, will be air conditioned. The window units go away, and it's going to be centralized, and we'll have very, very good control of all those systems. Right now, as indicated, it's a heating-only system, and so this just talks about A, B, and C, and K wings. It talks about some of the systems that we're installing with unit ventilators, or if you've been underneath and seen underneath the windows, that's a unit ventilator, or inside that casework, all of those get replaced. We've got fan coil units going into the K wing, and then we have some energy recovery ventilators also going in, which is a very good technically advanced device as well. main offices, this again talks about rooftop units, DX units, everything's being replaced and new. One of the things John talked about in our previous slide about the cost differences is that in our initial investment grade audit, we made the recommendation that all the equipment needed to be replaced. We were asked by the building committee to go back and validate our assumptions about the condition of that equipment, because some opinions were out there that some of it may just be able to be rebuilt or modernized with the existing equipment. So we actually asked AKF to join us on a condition assessment regarding that equipment, and the final opinion came back that it all needs to be replaced because of the condition that it's in. So that's really what's happening at the school. Everything is being replaced because of the state of the condition that it's currently in. So really, this is just it's kind of repetitive. This is all air conditioning and heating equipment. So it's all the units that you would see either on the roof or in the mezzanine areas, in the rotunda, or in the classrooms. The gym, again, the same. New ductwork for air distribution. In the pool area, I'm sure everybody's familiar that there's a dehumidification issue. When you walk into the school, you have a tendency to smell chlorine. So this unit is manufactured by Dectron. It is specific to pool applications. So when it's installed, you won't have that smell, and it actually, because of how it handles the air, it creates a much safer environment, because it'll help get rid of that curtain of chlorine that stays on top of the water when kids and people aren't in it. So it helps evacuate that hazardous potential. One of the most important upgrades is what we call a building management system, BMS. John talked about it a little bit earlier. Currently, the systems in the building are, and there's a little bit of this in there, but most of it is what we call pneumatically controlled, which is air going through black tubes controlling these devices. The black tubes get filled with dirt and grease, and so they don't really respond and act and control the way that they're supposed to. So the school is now going to be controlled by a fully electronic system, and all the pneumatics go away. It comes back to a central point of location for building control. So Greg will be at a workstation for scheduling purposes, for control purposes. And then the other thing that's important about this is that as long as he can get on the internet, he'll also be able to control the building from where he is if he gets an alarm. Some people aren't really happy about that because it's kind of like having an iPhone. They find you anywhere you are. So what it really does, I mean, it's a building management system. So it gives them management reports on how to operate the building much more efficiently. Most of the roof in the building has been replaced with the exception of A, B, and C. There are some significant issues with the roof. There's a lot of repairs, there's a lot of leaks, there's a lot of concern. And so we have addressed that. This actually says it's an EPDM roof that's being installed. We've actually upgraded the scope of work to a PVC roof, which is white reflective versus the black that's currently on the rest of the building. Much more energy efficient, gives you a very good R value. Current R value in that roof is probably 7, 12.
Yeah, I think R5.
Yeah. And so we're taking this up to a standard of R30, which is a significant improvement from what's currently there. We have done core testing for the insulation underneath the roof, and the insulation is wet. So that has to come off. We're going all the way down to the deck. If there's any issues with the deck, that deck will be replaced and the new roof will be put on. And this is a flat roof, and so we'll pitch the new one per the standards. And we've got a bunch of drains that we have to put in because the draining on this roof is not very good. Financially, the state provides you with a 27% reimbursement for this improvement. So that's worth some $250,000 to you. Maybe a little bit more for state reimbursement, and we haven't figured into our returns on the project at this point. When we're in the classrooms, we're going to be replacing the air conditioning units, and as a part of that, it's currently a 2-pipe system, meaning it heats only. It doesn't heat and cool. So we're taking that two-pipe system and we're going to turn it into a heating and cooling system, retaining the existing two pipes. So when you do that, when you run chilled water through hot water pipes, the hot water pipes aren't insulated. So when we do our curtain wall replacement, the A, B, and C wings, we have the ability to go in and insulate those pipes. So there's a lot of causally connected improvements within the classrooms that have to happen kind of at the same time. Logistically, it's going to help save you costs over the construction term. So John showed you the infrared scans. There's a lot of cracking in the caulking. So we just are working very hard to seal the building up so that heat loss, and now we have air conditioning, that loss is in place. So you can see over here that's actually A, B, and C wings. The K wing has a newer window system already in it. Lighting and control systems throughout the entire facility will be improved. The technology is advanced from what's currently in place. So this will include occupancy sensors, some type of building of lighting control. This is in every classroom, in common areas, and cafeterias and gymnasiums. Domestic water systems, they're kind of tired, a little bit inefficient. So if I remember right, this ties into the microturbine as well. So let's see if I can get to. Well, just remember the domestic hot water because the systems will be new, and then there's another device we're installing that's going to make even more efficient. We do have some photovoltaic. The original design was about 250 kW. Right now, there are some credits available from the national level that really help offset those costs. Those RECs, as we call them, renewable energy credits, they're still kind of in limbo right now. We know we can get them for 100 kW. That's why we backed it down from 250. So this provides a lot of value to you as well. The wind turbine, this started out again as being a larger system. I think it was 65 kW. Working with our wind experts for this area, it's not a high wind area, so we didn't see the value of making that investment. So we backed it down to about a 4 kW unit, which is really going to be used for academics. And so what we would do, and I've done it in many of my schools, is we put a dashboard inside a science room or a couple of science rooms so that you can use it for educational purposes. So it talks about wind speed, power generation, and a lot of other things that are very useful for curriculum. This is just really some miscellaneous. We've got motors and pumps. They're all going to be more efficient. We've got better controls on walk-in freezers and kitchen exhaust. The transformers inside the building, they're a little bit tired as well. They're old. They make more efficient ones, so they'll be replaced. A total of like 16 of them, if I remember right. 12, 16. Hot water pumps, water conservation in all of the restrooms. We're going to low flow devices, which will be aerators, flushometers, urinals. In addition to the Dectron unit, the pool cover, we're going to put in a semi-automatic pool cover. It's going to help keep the heat in the water instead of dissipating to the space. It'll also keep the chlorine in the water instead of dissipating to the space. And then we have some building envelope improvements, seal all the doors. We talked about the roof wall intersections, weather stripping, caulking, areas like that. And for some reason, I don't have a slide on the microturbine, so I don't know what happened to that. But let me talk about it just real quickly. A microturbine is a device that's going to actually produce electricity. It's going to be located within the building. That microturbine also creates heat. So we have heat recovery coming off that microturbine. And we're using that heat to heat the pool and heat the domestic hot water. So that microturbine creates power. So you have to buy less from the utility company. It's 65 kW, which is about 30% of the total load of the building, if I remember right. And so then there's other opportunities for that heat recovery to continue to drive your costs down to the lowest point that we possibly can. So the microturbine, I apologize for not having the slide. I'm not sure where it went. So, financial overview, before we get to any technical questions at all, I know want me to do it again?
Unless it's an exam.
So here's, this is what's interesting, is right now there's currently what we call, you gauge air conditioning in tonnage. Currently about 45 tons of air conditioning within the school. That is going up to 250 tons. And so as John talked about, that's going to increase your utility expenses. We estimate it's closer to 600,000. And so our annual guaranteed energy savings is $254,000 a year. Over the term, which we're talking about is 15 years, is about $3.81 million. And maintenance savings, we think that this is minimal at $30,000. That's about another $500,000 of maintenance savings over the term. Total savings about 284, about 4.2 million over 15 years. So total is about $8.5 million over 15 years. Guaranteed. If it isn't, I write a check and reconcile the accounts. The project investment at this point is $12.5 million. We know the state aid on the roof is worth about $270,000 probably. And I apologize, that's not in there. The EPAC tax credit that John talked about that you can only get through us because we are considered the designer of the system, and those dollars, it's the 179D tax credits, if anybody's familiar with it. Only the designer can receive those, so this would be a discount to you through our pricing structure, so that would come off this 12.4. Your local utility company has got some pretty attractive rebates out there, about $400,000. So right now, the net investment is about 11.8, and that doesn't include the 270 on the state aid assistance program. But we think some of these, the UI rebates, actually even at 400,000, may be a little bit further understated. We've met with them a couple times, and they think that it actually could be as much as double that. So that really becomes real money. So right now we're about from a net about $11.8 million. Tony and I have talked about a number of financing opportunities. I know he's going to talk about them next. On most of the projects that we provide financing through a different structure than a bond structure. It's through lease purchase. You're going to talk about it. I can add some discussion to it when you're going through yours, if anybody would like. So I think that's my last slide. I didn't want to talk about schedule quite yet, unless you want me to get into the phasing at this point, or
Should briefly cover
phasing.
There's still a link to
In a separate handout. Thank you. Might just be easier if I just do this. At 15, so I think I should.
Okay.
No problem. So what I've been asked by the building committee to do here is to come up with a construction schedule that really kind of phases the project in over a period of time. So what you're going to see here is a 2-year implementation process and a 3-year implementation process. So on the first phase, really what you're seeing is the year 1 costs. We kind of went back to our original base proposal, and I apologize, I don't have it on PowerPoint. You'll see the improvements to the left side that we would include in that year 1 with an initial investment of about $4.1 million. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. And then with the balance of the work being completed in year 2 of $8.7 million. Did you guys get that? So really, I mean, from a scheduling standpoint, we worked really hard with the administration of the school to try to put together a program where we could complete all of this work in 2013. And we felt very confident that we could get that done with some help from our partners that actually occupy the facility. And so this really kind of gives you an idea that it can be done over 2 years, and it can be done over 3 years, which may give you a little bit of relief depending on how you want to make the borrowing. So on the 3-year plan, you can see the initial investment is about $3.7 million. That 3.7 drives most of the energy savings that I've talked about in my presentation this evening. And then what we've done in year 2 is we've focused on implementing improvements into the A, B, C, and K wing, which I'm not sure if everybody can see this. But A, B, C, and K is in this area of the school over here. And there would be a point of demarcation, either, I think this is the D wing, either on either side of it. So at the end of the second year, 50% of the school would have new heat and be air conditioned. The majority of the classrooms will have lighting. It'll have better controls. It'll have a new window wall system, and it'll have new unit ventilators, and it will also have new casework inside those classrooms. Casework over on the window side, and casework over where there's an interior wall that has a hand sink and a faucet. So all of that work would be completed, and new ceilings. So I'm sure there are people here that have children attending the school. In most of these wings, they're open ceilings that just have metal trusses. So we're going to drop in a grid ceiling like this to just kind of clean the classrooms up. Okay. So that work would be done in year 2. And then year 3 is going to be the balance of the school. So we think that's a pretty good schedule. I think it accomplishes your goals of energy reduction in year 1. A $3.7 million investment. Year 2 then is a $6 million investment. And then year 3 kind of includes the renewables that we've talked about for about $3.1 million. Okay. There's a little bit of cost associated with scheduling a 3-year program because of demobilization and remobilization of contractors and all those types of things. So we built that into this model. It's about $500,000. Any questions?
Any questions? Very good.
Okay. I'm sure I'll be
No?
back.
Yeah.
I'll be back up. But I did want to say thank you to really everybody that's worked with us. They've been so cooperative, and we think that we have a very good program for you. And I know there's more work to do, and we're here to serve. And so we want to make sure that we're here supporting you the best that we can.
Okay.
Could you actually explain what your costs are then? Because there's the overhead and then the soft costs. Are those both something that goes to your cost?
The soft costs. Let me try to say it. There are some engineering fees for outside engineers. There are some hazardous materials that are at the school that have to be handled appropriately. Those would be a definition of soft costs.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of them. And then my overhead and profit is
Built into that overhead cost. Okay.
nice job.
Okay. So there's a presentation being passed around, so you can follow along here. What I wanted to do is just give you a little snapshot of our existing debt before we begin on the project. Our current debt service is at $2.65 million for fiscal year 13, and that basically includes bond issues that we've had in the past for the fire station, some open space, the Beecher South roof, the library, some other projects there that you're all familiar with. It also includes the note notes, interest on the notes for particularly the Woodbridge Country Club acquisition and the principal pay down that's required there. And although in 2013 there's no interest on the Public Works facility, there will be in the future. So that's all under existing town debt. As of 6/30, our total indebtedness for town only is about $20 million, a little over $20 million. So that would be the total indebtedness that's owed on those projects. So this is just a schedule of the debt service going out, say, 6 years, just to give you a feel for what is due in each year for each project. And for instance here, button on this thing. There we go. The Public Works facility, it's projected currently to start paying down interest here for on bond issue. So that is our existing debt service schedule as it currently stands. And that's just a graphical illustration of that schedule. Okay, just a few comments on the this particular financing that I wanted to make. First is it's a project budget of 12.49, as Doug indicated.
This is without phasing.
Correct. This is just performing it in one shot, which is says there substantial completion for the project, which was scheduled for November of 2013, which I think was the date that we were using. Right?
Yes.
And it doesn't, as Doug indicated earlier, it does not include any grant or utility incentives that would be available. As those become clearer, we could of course include those in this analysis.
Tony, does that mean it also doesn't include the reimbursement from the state? for
Correct.
the
Doesn't include that
$4
also.
million?
This is just based on the $12 million project budget. So as the project takes more shape and more, the timeline is defined a little better, then some of those things can be worked into this analysis. So they're currently, after working closely with ESG and with Ted Edgar from ESG, who was very helpful, we basically came up with 3 options that are available for financing. The first is a lease with level payments, and a lease is essentially a lease with a 15-year payback with level payments throughout the 15 years. The leases are only available for 15 years, and they don't do them currently any longer than that. Because there was a large payment due in the first years, and we wanted to see what it would look like with an alternate schedule, with putting some more of the principal back further into the lease, so that the first few years the payments weren't as large, but then of course will be larger in the middle and towards the end of the schedule. So that was something that we wanted to take a look at, which I have here for you. And finally, to issue bonds as we do with some of our other projects. So the other thing I want to bring to your attention is the lease option contains a Connecticut buy-down provision, which is essentially an incentive for the first 10 years of the lease to get 100 basis point reduction on certain eligible costs. So it's a calculation that has to take place. And so you do get a little bit of a benefit there over the traditional bonding route. And this is something that ESG is familiar with and was very helpful in explaining to us.
So Tony, both option 1 and 2, the lease is through ESG.
It's actually through Bank of America.
Oh,
Right, I believe that's the bank, right? But ESG is the partner that we would be working with.
okay.
But it's a third party, is the Bank of America is actually the. So the lease term for option 1 is 15 years. And so the base rate for all 3 of these projections, all 3 of these options is 2.25%. With the reduction from the buy down option, that will bring this effective rate to 1.905%. And that's based on current rates. Obviously these can change. ESG has made a commitment to matching what rates we would get through our bonding with their leasing program. So was some question about that earlier, whether leasing rates will cost more or not. And so that was a commitment that they made to us. So the total principal is 12.49. Total interest is about $2 million, which gives you $14.49 million. So there's a budget impact over 20 years, is about which is net of the energy savings that was discussed, and I'll get into that in a second. $11.9 million, and a tax impact over 20 years. I did all three of them in 20 years because the bond issue was 20 years, so I wanted to have an apples to apples comparison for you. And there's a handout on this presentation, which I didn't put on the slide simply because there's a lot of figures on it. But it basically, this is a summary of that handout here. And based on your current schedule, the first payment, which you have program benefits, which are the first two columns, which is the energy savings and the maintenance savings, which were discussed earlier. And then the debt payment, which would be the lease payment, is $954,535. So you'll see in the first 10 years of that, there's that buy down provision, which reduces the interest rate in the first 10 years, and then it goes up to $990 for the last 5 years. And there's also a cost each year. You want to just explain that briefly?
That's the M&B cost.
M&B cost, yeah.
So as a part of the guarantee reconciliation process, we have to measure and verify that the savings are actually taking place, and we do that to determine the guarantee. And so there's a small charge for that. I think it's $5,000 or $10,000 a year, and we have to do that to comply with the guarantees.
So the
Tony, why don't you just explain that? I know what it is, but the tax impact over 20 years, just.
yeah, okay,
Are you
so
gonna get to that?
I'm going to get to that. Yeah.
Okay.
So the budget impact after you add back the energy costs for this isn't the program impact. This would be the budget impact for the additional air conditioning charge and utility costs is a $855,000, and that would be in the first year, fiscal year 14, assuming the as indicated earlier, the November of 2013 completion date. So that would be approximately 0.7 mils if you use our current grand list figures. At that's an average assessment of $325,000. So that's actually from the assessor's office, which is approximately our average assessment here in Woodbridge. So the first year would be $227.90. So that's sort of where that comes from.
So is that the gross assessment, Tony, or the 7%?
That's the assessment, not the value.
Gross assessment.
That's the assessment, not the value. So
That's 70%.
correct.
So in other words, just to get a perspective on it, that means the house would have to be worth somewhere, say, around 4.
Right, correct. So you can use that as a guide.
The value
Figure.
before change, the taxable assessment would be 70% of it.
Right.
Okay.
So over a 20-year period, if you add those up, that's where you get the 2,889.
Tony,
Hopefully that's
quick
clear.
question for you. On the energy savings, you've got a number that varies through the term.
Sure, I can explain that. The energy savings are,
They're guaranteeing a certain?
well, no, they're guaranteeing savings of the energy units, correct? Whether it's kilowatts or gallon oil or whatever it is, not the actual dollars, correct?
And units. It's current based on units based on current price.
Right. So you have to make assumptions about pricing going on in the
Right.
future.
So your unit assumption based on current price, you had 254,000.
This was
You start
must
with
have
a different
updated. This is from the previous presentation. Did you update it or something?
I'm just wondering
There's
where
been a
it's
few
from.
updates during this process.
So you could just progress it because it's 221.
Right.
So it would really, it changes a little.
Changes
But the
slightly,
reason
yeah.
it's varying is because,
There's an escalator for energy costs of 2%.
yep,
There's a little note at the bottom which explains some of the assumptions that were built into the schedule. This is designed to give you just sort of an idea of what this would look like over a 20-year period.
If we did it right now.
We did it right now, right? And the important thing is, which particularly for this presentation, which starts tomorrow, is that assuming you did it now with a completion date of November of 13, the first lease payment would be in next year's budget. just so you know. Okay.
And so by the budget impact number, that's what we would need to cover?
Correct, for next year's, right, correct. That's what I wanted that to be.
Yep, got it.
So, the second option, the anticipated rate, this is when we change the amortization schedule to be a little less in the first few years and a little more in the last half of the term. It's basically the same setup here. Principal's the same. Interest goes up by about $400,000 because you're paying principal later on in the term, which increases your interest costs. And therefore, your total indebtedness. And the changes, of course, also the budget impact over 20 years, net of energy savings. And this brings your tax impact of a little higher to 2921. And again, there's a schedule attached which has that information. You'll see in the first fiscal year of 2014, budget impact is now 364,898 as opposed to 365,000 as opposed to 850.
55.
Right. So you'll see that you'll pay a little more in interest and a little more in your average tax impact, but the budget impact in the first few years is not as great. So that would be essentially the trade-off.
Well, yeah, what this doesn't show, Tony, is that, for example, in fiscal year 16-17, the debt service drops by 500.
That's true. That's
So,
true.
this is just what this project is gonna cost. Let's not take into account the overall debt service, which this could probably be incorporated into that and keep debt service the same in that year, so.
Because the debt service on the other obligations declines.
Correct.
This is just strictly,
Right.
this is what this will cost the taxpayer.
Correct. This is just simply.
That doesn't mean that we're gonna, right, it doesn't take into account that we're gonna have a huge drop
Right.
in debt service in 1 year.
Correct.
15 is your toughest year.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. That's correct.
15, 16, yeah.
We should overlay
adds.
those two things together.
So the last one is if we issue bonds, 2.25%. This is a competitive process where we go out to the market and we basically have a bid opening for, as we do with all our other bonds issues, and we will get the lowest rate. And it's projected currently about 2.25% based on what other towns of our size are getting for, and our credit quality for their bond issues. It's actually a little lower right now, so it's a little closer to 2. So because this is not until, would be till November, we put it up just a little bit to 2.25%. So you'll notice the principal's a little more here because there's a cost to issue. So I put that into the principal payment, which is the cost to issue notes and bonds for this project. The total interest would be 2.97 million. Of course, that's over 20 years, not 15. So your total indebtedness is a little more this way, and therefore it impacts your budget impact and your tax impact at a little under $3,000. However, if you look at this chart, you'll see with this method, the first year is actually, because when you issue bonds, you don't pay principal until a year after you issue the bonds. So actually, first principal payment wouldn't be due until 2015. But you'll see that the budget impact is at 802 and then declines each year to 481 in the final year. So that's under your typical
Right,
bond
but-
scenario.
But the debt payment is almost $1 million more than
Correct.
option.
Because it's primarily because it's
Right.
5 more years,
Right.
and it's a little higher in principal,
Right.
and then the interest rate's a little higher. I just wanted to just make a few other comments just before we wrap this up. There are a few other items here that are in the capital plan that are other capital projects that the town is being requested of the town. So I wanted to just make that point.
Sorry, Tony, which number includes those three proposed projects?
I
The town indebtedness
no,
at 630?
no, not yet, I'm getting to that.
Sorry.
That's okay. So that bonding option I presented, including the three projects I just mentioned, which are way out here on the curve. They don't really impact up here, they move out here on the debt curve. But this is would be the bonding option. I didn't want to do all three options to make it confusing, but this would be the bonding option, and the existing debt is in blue. It's the same schedule as earlier. And then this would be the addition of the current project along with the other three projects, but those again are out here, not so much up here. Okay, so you'll see, and as you indicated in 2016, that's where the biggest challenge exists. In 2017, there's a drop off here, which is as projects get paid off, there's some opportunities here. Finally, just a quick comment about Andy's overlapping debt. We are also responsible for that, and the current overlapping town's portion of Amity debt will be about $15 million, a little over $15 million on June 30th of 2013, and that brings our total direct debt and overlapping debt to $36 million as of June of 2013. So that's would be our direct debt, which was earlier in the program, which was about 20 million,
Right.
plus the 15.7, gives us our total indebtedness, including Amity, as of the June 30th of this year. So finally, just to sort of give you an idea of what it would look like compared to some debt fiscal indicators that we use to keep track of our debt. And I used 16 because that was a higher year, and then where we are currently. One is a debt service as a percentage of your operating budget, which currently we're at 9.31%, and in 16 it goes to about 10.72%.
This is if we adopted.
This is if we do all this at once. This is no phasing involved at all in this discussion.
With the bonding.
Right, with bonding, right.
Does it include the other projects?
the other projects.
That are pending?
Right. Just
Only
so
projects that are approved, right?
correct. The other two projects that are pending won't have any impact in this particular these years. This is just the,
It doesn't include projects that are proposed.
does not know. It's minus, of course, the current Beecher project is in this figure.
Right, that's what we're looking at.
Right.
Right. But not the other projects. Yeah. Right, the other two aren't in here, right. And then our debt per capita would be,
But again, Tony, those numbers don't include any of the grants or
Correct.
incentives.
correct.
What's the best way to factor the grants and incentives into the calculation?
Once we have some better information on that, and we have some clearer information in terms of cash flow and when the grants are available, and if you do the leasing option versus the bonding option, under the bonding option, we'll issue notes first so that we can reflect the grants in our bond issue. The leasing option, I'm not sure if that's as available to us. According to Ted, some of the utility incentives come in after the fact, and so you don't necessarily you have to lease the full amount, even though you get the incentives after you issue the lease amount. So it's
they
not.
would hit your operating budget?
So we get your operating budget, right?
So, and we're not factoring in any of that?
No, not at the moment.
And that's a sizable amount. $1 million, that's
Yeah.
kind of
Could be.
sizable.
Yeah.
No, from year to year, I mean, it would actually reduce the operating expense that's requested from the school.
Right.
Tony, are there, the comparison of these percentages now versus what 2016 would look like are helpful, but are there guidelines on other towns of our size or in our range as to, you shouldn't cross a certain line?
I would say that really the one guideline that it's just a guideline. It's not a hard and fast rule, but generally debt service as a percentage of your operating budget should be around 10%. I mean, it could go up above 10% for a few years. It's not a
Right.
big issue,
Right.
but you should try to keep that as sort of a guideline.
Is there really a practical option of doing this in one fell swoop?
So we worked very diligently with my construction management team to be up here to confirm that exact question. And we feel very strongly, based on the level of engineering that's currently in place, the fact that we are shovel-ready, to use an old term, that depending on when financing can get secured and construction contracts can be agreed upon, we feel very confident that we can be of a substantial completion, as you talked about, by the end of the year. So it's aggressive. I know the school has made provisions to relocate their summer programs to another facility, which gives us 100% access, which really does help us. That's why we like the one-year schedule, because if you do it over a number of years, they're going to have to do that maybe 3 times.
Right.
There's some jeopardy programs that have been talked about by that level of relocation. But as Dr. Sella says, it's the building that never sleeps. So 600 to 700 students every day in the summertime is a very active school. So yeah, we worked on that. We feel very confident that we can. Just to add a couple of things onto the financing, if I can, unless you have another question on that.
Well, would the relocation costs, those are not factored into here?
Not in my budget.
Right.
Relocation costs, we're talking about summer school costs.
It's just summer school.
That would be our operating budget.
Right, but, I mean, have those been estimated as to what that would be? Would that be covered by the people who are paying for the summer program?
Depending on what we get to do.
We'd have to get a signal from the town that this is happening, because there's a lot of logistics involved in here. There's so many
Okay.
programs, and if the town decided to go in that direction, we would come up with a number of scenarios, and of course try to keep the cost as low as possible. We're looking at Ezra Academy, correct, Dr. Fleischman?
Empty for the summer.
Okay.
What the cost would be, I'm not sure.
I think the question here, Sandy, is the tax impact of this.
Sure.
So I think that sort of answers the question. I think, and that's why the Board of Selectmen a year ago requested that this proposal for phasing be implemented. And I understand how the building committee got to where they are, and we thank them for that.
Okay.
And unless there's any change in the feeling of the Board of Selectmen on this policy to phase this in, I think the question should be, do we want the building committee to go back and to follow up with the phasing guidelines that Doug has developed, and to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance?
Doug, can you comment on how the phasing would impact lease versus debt, direct debt?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was just going to talk a couple of other sound bites on the financing. Is that if you're familiar with non-appropriation type contracts, our contract is done under a non-appropriation clause, which means that our debt isn't considered constitutional debt. It's really considered an operating expense because of the non-appropriation. So if the debt payment isn't appropriated by the township, then my investors take the risk of that for the term of the agreement. Okay, so I think that's an important piece, because it's not constitutional because of the non-appropriation clause in the contract. The phasing, I really haven't done 3-year construction projects. Most of my clients, Sherwood County Schools, we've done full school renovations, open concept buildings that we've built walls, closed them up, and made them into classrooms. So the challenge is that we have to go back and talk to our investors. And the reason I'm using Bank of America is because they're the only investor that offers the buy-down rate that Tony talked about. And that's worth about 35 basis points to you. And that's real money too, as we saw in your spreadsheets. So we have to go back in and work with them, if in fact it's going to be phased in over 3 years, to come up with another financing schedule that says maybe there's, on the uneven payments, there's a way that we can get that done during construction, because investors may not want to wait 3 years in order to have that repayment in place. So I'm not saying it isn't an option. We feel very confident because we had those discussions with B of A. I just have to fine tune it to see if that's the direction that you want me to go. And there could be some rate implications on that as well. But I want to make sure everybody understands that there's about $500,000 upcharge to phase that in over time. And I haven't taken into consideration what the school is concerned about, so I'll be more than happy to help you provide any information that you need to make that decision.
So can we have any input either from the Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance on this concept of phasing, starting with the Board of Selectmen? Is that pretty much your feeling on it?
You know, I'm trying to reconstruct in my own mind how, why we, I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but the issue of phasing is meant to be to sort of soften the tax impact over a period of time. But I'm having trouble reconciling that with the fact that it actually ends up costing you more at the end of the day.
Well, anytime you phase something, that's going to be the case.
No, so the argument pro or con for that, I think, is impacted by the fact that the overall cost is higher. So am I understanding it correctly?
That's true.
Okay,
Absolutely.
and that potentially, and I'm open to hearing more about this, but potentially it obviously has a greater impact on the school system itself because it's more disruption. And I'm not throwing this out to be hysterical, but in light of recent events, I think we don't want to have a porous school community longer than we absolutely have to. So I'm keeping an open mind for the moment, but I'm not convinced that phasing is the right thing to do. I'd like to hear what other people have to say.
I mean, that's why I asked the question.
Right, no, I
Can it
understand.
really be done by the end of this,
I understand.
calendar year? But it's, $855,000. That's a lot of money compared to $365.
Right.
And so
And you
it's
have to
$500,000
consider-
Short-term money versus long-term.
Right.
I totally understand.
$500,000.
That this
I understand.
proposal doesn't end with the Board of Finance
I
and
understand.
Board of Selectmen. It has to be approved by a 2/3 vote of the voters.
And that's very
So we want to
That's a
make
big
this as acceptable to the voters as
palatable
we
and
can
domestic.
Whether
and
it's,
accomplish the same result.
whether it's a lease or a bond, it still has to go.
Definitely.
Right.
Well, I think I'm safe in saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, this is the single largest
It is
bond issue we've ever dealt with.
for the
Right.
town.
And this is more than anything we've ever dealt with. And again, in our efforts to control tax increases and keep things within reason in these difficult economic times, in a perfect world, hey, let's do it. You know,
Right,
let's
right.
not have all the disruptions and let's not have all the delays. Absolutely, but with the debt we have and the debt we are gonna have, it makes a lot of sense if you look at that debt schedule to try and push some of this off. Again, like I said, in a perfect world, they'd say do it, but I think to not have a huge tax increase in this next budget cycle, I don't see how, in my
we can do it.
opinion, how, again, this is the largest bond issue we've ever dealt with. Larger than the firehouse, the library, any Beecher project we've ever done. I think the only bigger project was one that we weren't directly responsible for, the big Amity project. But that's as Tony said, it's for the Amity budget, so,
And you haven't included police department.
yeah. Right.
And there's no reason to believe that part of that program is not going to get approved.
Right. No, that's
So we're ratcheting it up.
We got a $500,000 grant for the police department from the
That's
state.
And if it's not used this year, if you don't
Well,
begin this year, you're going to lose it.
we can use part of that for design purposes. Yeah. And
To follow up on Matt's point, it looks like 2016 is the point at which you would be more comfortable incurring more new debt. I'm guessing that all these talented finance people could possibly come up with some way to do the project in the 1 year, not phased, but structure the lease and the payment schedule so that the hit doesn't really impact until 2016.
I think Tony tried to.
We tried to do that.
That's
to the
program
extent
two.
you start to do that,
That's two.
you get negative amortization. where you-
I have a question actually. Oh, I'm sorry, Ann, go ahead.
No, I'm just suggesting that maybe that's something that could be looked at as a way to accomplish all of this.
Yeah, I think, Tony, I think has looked at that briefly,
Yeah.
but we can give you that information
Good.
at a subsequent meeting.
I actually had a question. In the event that we do phase this 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, is it a rolling 15-year guarantee, a rolling 15-year parameter? Or when does it start, when? Because as I understand.
That's a really good question. There would have to be a guarantee for each phase of work. Right. So the first year is going to carry 15, the second year is going to carry 15, third is going to carry 15. Okay.
And it's your firm that's coming in and verifying whether you've achieved the savings that you're telling us we're gonna get. And we're paying you for that.
Just like all my other customers.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Let me, I mean, that's a very good point. We had this in-depth discussion with the Board of Ed. So I won't get into it too far, but as a company, there are federal standards out there, protocols that have been adopted. They're called the IPMVP protocols for energy measurement and verification. We as a company have adopted those as our standard. So we're compliant with federal standard. We do a lot of federal business. We're compliant with their standard. It's your utility information that you're sending to me that I'm going to measure and verify against the base year. So that's your information. The software I use is called Energy Cap, which is third party. So the only thing I'm doing is taking information from all these three groups, put it into a system, and having an output.
And that's actually helpful. And is the 15-year parameter is itself an industry standard for these kinds of things?
In some of the states I do projects in, by statute, they're limited to 10 years. Some are 15 and some are 20. Okay.
And why are we 15?
I think it's a statute. But the other issue is that sometimes Bank of America, the investors, don't like to really borrow longer than that. And I think that's the case here.
Okay.
But if you look at the 1 year
I may have misunderstood.
construction phase,
I understood the 15-year to be a result-oriented time period. That you're telling us that these results exist for 15 years.
that's correct.
Beginning with the moment when that rolling toll begins.
As soon as my construction over, you start receiving the benefits.
Okay. That's not the same as a financing point, which is just the point you just made. I mean, it's not tied to
Maybe I
financing.
misunderstood your question.
The 15-year parameter is a energy savings parameter.
Yes.
That's what you're asking. Okay.
Yeah.
That was all I was asking.
Okay. So
It drives the cost of the project, but from their standpoint.
From their
ours.
standpoint, no, I understand. That's what. But from our standpoint, in year 16, what are our expectations with respect to the performance of this building? That's what I'm trying to get to.
What you're getting at is whether the Bank of America is driving the 15 years.
I think right now that's the limitation
Right,
in their
it
term
is.
of financing,
It's a limitation of
but they're
financing.
also the only investor that's offering the rate buy down.
Okay.
So, and that's in partnership with your local utility company. So that's kind of that relationship. So as an energy services company providing financing, which we don't make any money on, we're just a pass-through conduit for those benefits. It's it's almost 35 basis points, which over 15 years is again real money.
Okay, well,
As
that's
Tony
very
indicated.
helpful.
You still get your energy savings after you're 15.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get
It's
to.
not a guarantee.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So step aside from the cost issue for a moment. What is the useful life, if you will, of this investment with respect to the kinds of ongoing savings that we can
20-year
expect?
20 years.
20.
This is
The
all
roof
heavy.
is 20 years.
This is all heavy metal stuff,
Okay.
except for light bulbs, and those are typically 5-year warranties.
Okay.
And I
So
think Tony's factoring.
That's why I used 20 years on my analysis, because
Right.
it's a
So
20-year
even after we
lifespan.
stop paying.
Right.
okay. Well, that wasn't
continue
clear to me.
Through that to the.
So thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tony or Doug, if we did a 3-year phase, so the rate differential, if you had to guess, is what?
Interest rate,
Yeah.
that's really hard to say.
I mean, do you think Bank of America would still be
I'm not sure they'll lock for 3 years for a 3-year construction term.
would this be like a blended?
I think that's
15
the
years.
that's the way we'd have to look at it.
So we don't really know how that would look.
So there's risk. There's risk in a couple of areas that you should be aware of. Number one, there's interest rate risk if in fact I can't lock for the 36-month term. for construction. There's risk with the utility rebates that are gonna come through with IU. We're owned by a utility company, $3 billion as I indicated. They offer rebates. Those rebates are going away. They just phase them out because that pool of money is either dispersed or they just bring it in because they gotta make, they have to make their earnings for their shareholders too. The other risk is gonna be in the grants. We don't know what the state's gonna do with the roof. I mean, that's 27%. So just to bring it to your attention, there's about $800,000 in there of risk that over the phased approach, it may not be available when you get to that point of construction.
Any other comments?
I just have one other question. Betsy?
No, I just want to understand, Tony, the options that you gave us are based on phasing?
No,
No.
Nothing.
This
That
is doing
is
it
totally-
today,
okay.
tomorrow.
just doing, like I said in one of the first slides,
Okay.
this assumes a substantial completion of November of 2013.
Okay, so if we did the phasing, how much does that actually reduce? Let's say the custom lease option, which has the lowest amount
We
of,
would have to rerun the figures and see where that, how that plays out.
But it wouldn't
well,
reduce it.
It increases the total, but it would be, it depends.
it increases the
difference.
total,
You're
but
looking at
it
budget impact
decreases the
versus-
budget impact.
Yeah,
Be-
you're looking
Because
at
I
budget
think it's
impact
really,
versus-
Right.
it's hard to say, because if what we have to do is come up with $365,000, okay, for, 2014, that's what this is saying. So
Right.
we could, without phasing,
Right.
the cost to us is $365,000.
Under this scenario.
Under this scenario
Right.
of option 2.
Right.
So the question is, can we absorb that? Or what would we be absorbing if we went with the 2-year phasing? Because I think we need to
Good question, yeah.
know really what is the real impact of what we have to cover? And if it's half the 364, is it 3/4 of it? Because that makes a difference in terms of whether or not it's worth it to go to a 2-year phasing or or doing it all at one time.
Well,
That's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
that's what my question
Right,
initially
right,
was.
because to me, this is something that potentially is doable, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, so getting back to we don't have that answer for you.
Right, I understand.
So I think we would all agree then, we're still consistent with the phasing aspect of this. We just want to get more information before we make a decision as to what we want to do.
Right, I would like to know what the financial impact of the 2-year phasing or 3-year phasing is to compare it to this do it all now figure.
Yeah, in addition to doing the phasing.
Yeah.
Right. You want
Yes.
you want to have
Right,
everything
Right,
that's out there,
right,
then you make
because
the
this is saying we do everything now.
correct.
By the end of the year,
That's
this
the
project
analysis
will be done.
that's been done today.
And with option 2, it'll cost us $365,000. And that's without any of the rebates or anything
Right.
else like
How
that.
does the
Right.
phasing?
And
And so how
that'll
does the
double
how much-
in 2016
Right,
or 17.
17.
And then it'll go up to over $1 million in 2021.
Right.
We have to figure.
Correct, correct. But I think it's important to see how that would actually change if we phased this.
Sure.
Because, after you finish year 2 or year 3, okay, you are still going to incur those big expenses. And I don't know what that schedule actually looks like.
We have to
And
see
the
that.
bottom
Probably have to see
line,
that.
We have to
right,
see
and
that.
the bottom line will be bigger.
It'll be dramatically lower in the first couple of years, correct?
Right, exactly,
Just in year 1, 364, you're financing a third. Yeah, it's gonna take 3 years and then it's gonna really catch up, but it will be dramatically lower in the first couple of years, that sounds.
Can we also see the overlay against the pay down on the other debt so that we can,
Sure, yeah.
to Matt's earlier point, to see
Sure,
how
that would
it
be,
all
that view would
fits?
be once, yeah, certainly.
Because that makes the other backloaded option look perhaps more palatable.
Okay.
Just one last question.
Yeah.
This is the biggest, obviously, this is the biggest building in town. So what I'm hearing is we're gonna seal up the envelope, energy savings, mechanicals, roof, et cetera. after all that is done, what else is there in this school?
To be done, you mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know they knocked a lot of stuff out. I know there's casework.
We actually knocked a lot of
Casework is
stuff
Yeah.
out. And we do actually, you have the number in here, because one of the things that the Board of Ed was pushing for was putting the millwork in, and we actually have put
That is in there.
the casework, millwork has been put back in, so.
That's in here?
That's
That
why
was one of the things that was said, oh, and then we'll still have millwork, well, now the millwork is in.
it's actually in there.
So there's
The other way to
no,
look at it is that's why we like 15 years, because in 20 years,
how do we do
we'll all be sitting here talking about this again.
No, we won't.
Well, and the other thing is, Matt, is that if you look at it in terms of the investment we put into Amity, because when you talk about the dollar amount that's being absorbed, this is a very big project. It's on a similar scale to our share of the Amity project, right, which was 67 million that went up, and then we had a percent of that. So if you think about it in terms of what will Amity be coming back for in the next 15 years, it's a similar question. So I think that Amity met their needs. I think that this project is going to meet our needs. It's going to be similar. We won't be back next year or the year after that. Yeah, the last project in this building, you know, we're just paying it off. This is the 96 construction, which only touched a very small area of the school. We got all the rest of the school taken care of.
But wasn't that an $8 million project?
Wasn't that what?
Yeah,
How much
but-
is that?
In 1996 dollars, that was
7.9, I think.
Yeah, 7.9 million.
I was on that building committee.
So was I.
So was
I think so was Jeff.
Right.
That's why I'm afraid.
That's when we learn about valued
So
engineering,
you know what, in
right?
20 years, we will be back.
I'm getting a little nervous about this.
Right, you're coming full circle.
Okay, any other comments? If not, then we have an amended charge for the
Yes.
building committee, which
It's handed out, yeah.
been handed out, and it's a subsection,
I don't think it was.
subsection C is new here.
Is it?
No?
I don't
Can
think.
Can you show us what it looks like? So we don't-
Just for the Board of Selectmen?
Selectmen
Yeah,
only.
just for the Board of Selectmen. Okay.
Well, that's
We
why.
don't mean to,
Hey, it's our
once it's approved, we'll give it, okay.
Not a problem.
So there is an amendment to the existing charge to add a new subparagraph C, which reads, review and recommend security improvements to the facility. And so otherwise, the charge is the same. So I would entertain a motion to approve that amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that passes unanimously. So then, going forward, then, we would anticipate the building committee to meet, review the phasing options that have been described by Doug, and to come up with a proposal for that. And in the meantime, Tony will fine tune the information he's had received to date, what he's presented to date, or fine tune that, and then also analyze the phasing aspects of it. And then we'll have a subsequent meeting to discuss that. Okay? Yeah,
Can I ask
Steve?
ESG just quick?
Yep.
So just out of curiosity, if this is potentially something that can be done this summer, what's the lead time to say yes to you in order to get this done? Because it seems to me it's the end of January. You know, this is taking a long time. I just want to know, I mean, there might come a point where we can't even do it this summer. And if we're going to plan for summer enrichment, summer rec, all these programs, I think it would be helpful for us on the board of ed to kind of know just what are the gate after which we're not going to do this summer is.
Can I develop that date and then just kind of respond to you? I don't, you know, we're close to it. You know, we have the major pieces of equipment are 12 to 16 week deliveries. I think one of the benefits we have this summer is that school, the end of school has been extended 2 weeks.
Just
21st is the last day of school. No more weather.
I'm sorry, but the start of school is on the backside.
We have to bring that to the Board of Education. There's
Okay.
possible-
We don't know yet.
I'm sorry. I should say there's a potential.
Yeah, please.
There's a potential of an extended schedule that we may be able to get some construction work completed.
If we do get a signal, then we would go into that kind of scenario of bringing the board to trying to move the date of the beginning of school to after Labor Day, getting the cooperation of the other board districts, but this takes time to do. And we can't initiate it until we get a signal.
I would think best case. I mean, when it's all said and done, with all approvals, everything needs to be done. I think we would be better off thinking in terms of a 2-year program at best. Would be an accelerated program. If we were able to get it financed and get through and get all the votes done. So I mean, trying to push this thing through for 2013, and we're sitting here in January, moving into February, and being very, very ambitious. And I think even if we did that, it would end up being a 2-year program. So,
I think the logistics of doing that, Dr. Stella, of, making use of another facility for summer school and doing all that is a challenge. And then the other challenge would be to complete it on time. And, those are all risks. But if you can plan that out a little further, I think it would be easier done. It'd be easier for the school, it'd be easier for everybody as a practical matter.
I'm assuming there's got to be presentations to the public.
There have. After we take some action on this, approve whatever we do eventually approve, then there has to be some public information sessions, and then there has to be a referendum. So that's going to be a consuming process. You have to educate the public on this. This is,
Yeah, we're not just going to decide and go to referendum. We're going to decide and have public, like we did with, I know Amity had many with their project, and we did too.
Yeah, we
too
did.
with
We
that
did.
project, and it got voted down. Right? That's the other challenge.
It was approved in two
Right. The challenge is on the first vote, it's got to be 2/3.
or at least 50%.
I don't know that we've ever had a 2/3 the first time. Firehouse went down.
2/3 and then at 51%.
Firehouse went down. I think the library went down. Yeah. Then the second time is a majority. Right.
Well, and the Amity project did get approved.
That way.
It's a school as opposed to a library.
But that place was literally falling apart. So it was not.
So I think we're off to a good start here. There's been a lot of work done on this, and so we're framing the issue here. What's the best, most prudent way to do this? So let's continue on that journey to do that.
Impressive.
Okay. Thank you all. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.